Big Al was up bright and early this morning leading the entourage for the final time this season, because inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, 26 seniors are playing their final home game. Many of them have helped this recent resurgence for the Crimson Tide, who play Chattanooga today. Today's SEC Network Game of the Week is presented by Wrangler. We are live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where the second-ranked Crimson Tide look to continue their perfect season against the Mocs of Chattanooga, a team that is 6-4. They were 1-11 a year ago. Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Bell alongside Chris Doring, the former Florida Gator wide receiver. And Chris, I know you love watching tape of Julio Jones. You guys are built a lot alike. Julio's playing much better thanks to a little help from his friends.
Yeah, Julio Jones struggled early in the season. Teams were doubling him. They were rolling coverages his way. But in the last 3 ball games, he's had 15 catches for 222 yards and 2 touchdowns. The reason for that, the emergence of Marquise Mays. Marquise Mays is the explosive guy on the other side of the ball. He can stretch the coverages and taking a lot of pressure off of Julio Jones.
They're big play threats, no doubt about it. For Chattanooga, they've turned their fortunes around from 1-11 to 6-4, thanks in part to their quarterback, who used to be a Tennessee Volunteer. B.J. Coleman transferred. He's made the most of it.
Yeah, B.J. Coleman has been a perfect addition to this UT Chattanooga team this year. He's a Tennessee guy. He knows what it's like to play in the Southeastern Conference. He won't be intimidated today, but I think the biggest thing that he's brought to this UT Chattanooga team is his experience. He's had the guys out in 7-on-7 in the offseason. He's had them in the film room. Some of the guys were a little rankled by him early on, but it's his intensity and leadership that is his biggest asset. Today he's going to have to throw the ball quickly against this Alabama defense.
All right, Chris, we're excited as Chattanooga wins the opening toss and they defer to the second half. An absolutely gorgeous day in Tuscaloosa. The weather forecast was calling for rain. It may come later, but for now, it's a sun-baked afternoon for these Crimson Tide supporters. Big games ahead, the Iron Bowl next Friday, then the SEC Championship, and then who knows where, perhaps the BCS National Title game, but that's getting ahead of ourselves, Chris, as we talked to Nick Saban yesterday. Regardless, whether it's Chattanooga, Auburn, Florida, they prepare exactly the same every week.
Nick Saban preaches consistency. Consistency in your preparation, consistency in the practice field, consistency in whatever you're doing. And heading into this ball game, he wanted their mindset to be as if they were playing Auburn or Florida or Georgia or anybody else. They're not going to take anything away from this ball club. They respect UT Chattanooga, and they're going to come out with all guns a-blazing this afternoon.
Craig Kamei will kick off for the Mocs. And Javier Arenas and Julio Jones are deep for the Crimson Tide. A short kick. Julio fields it at the 25. Works his way up outside the 35-yard line before he's pushed out of bounds. 10 on the return, and there's the young man who's led this Alabama team this year, Greg McElroy, 26-0 as a starter. Chris Doring, 16-0 in high school, 10-0 here. Hey, you can complain all you want, but he's a winner.
Doesn't necessarily wow you with anything that he does, but his leadership is tremendous. Obviously hadn't lost a football game in any game that he's started since high school. I think that says something about this young man and the type of leader he is.
First play from the Wildcat as McElroy spreads out to the wide outlook, and here comes Mark Ingram. Talking to Russ Huesman, the head coach for Chattanooga, he was somewhat concerned about tackling Mark Ingram. And I thought he was joking, but he was serious as we talked to him again last night.
Well, SEC players have a hard time tackling Mark Ingram. He has 812 yards after contact this season. It's tough to bring him down. These guys are going to have to get some hats on him if they're going to bring him down in the open field today.
So second down and about 4. First pass of the day from McElroy through the hands of Julio Jones, who was there and would have had the first down. Looking at the starting lineups at the top of the screen above our score panel. Alabama is about as healthy as you can possibly be at this stage of the season, and that's a positive for this unit. Jim McElwain, the offensive coordinator, and yesterday he said, you know, with the defense that Alabama has, we don't want to make a lot of mistakes, and that's kind of what we've seen this season.
Yeah, they want to be very conservative with what they do on offense. They don't want to put their defense in a short field situation, and they've done a good job of that so far this season.
Ingram lines up behind McElroy, who decides to pull it down himself. And he's going to be short of the first down as he picks up just 1 yard. Smigelski, the middle linebacker for Chattanooga, makes the stop. And Nick Saban in his 3rd season has certainly turned these fortunes around for these 92,000 plus here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So excited about what he's brought to the table. Another 10-win season. That's 30 for the Crimson Tide. Only Oklahoma has more with 31. B.J. Fitzgerald, one of those seniors, on the field before the game with his punt. That caroms down near the goal line. And it goes into the end zone. So Chattanooga will start from the 20-yard line. 55 yards on the punt for Fitzgerald.
Disappointing play there for Alabama. They had a chance to down it inside the 5-yard line and didn't handle the ball very well. So that's something that's not going to make Nick Saban very happy. I know he's big on field position and special teams, and they got to make those plays in any ball game.
B.J. Coleman is big, 6'5", rather slender, about 205. We saw him last night in his warm-ups. Not a big muscular guy, but he gets it out really quick. He's only been sacked 9 times this season. That's 3rd in his division, the FCS. That's what he does, the quick toss to the outside. Jar Galt on the receiving end goes for 5 yards. Again for the Mocs, their starting lineups at the top of your screen. They do not run the football very often at Chattanooga. In fact, last week, only 12 running plays. Most of those came at the end of the game when they were trying to kill the clock for their 6th victory of the season. 2nd down and 4. Galt fires at the outside and through the hands of Blue Cooper. Cooper's the top receiver for Chattanooga. That's a rare drop.
That was a good-looking throw by Jared Galt right there. Jared Galt, the former quarterback actually last year for UT Chattanooga, sets up well and lets it go. And yeah, that's very unlike Blue Cooper. He's been very dependable. 82 catches for this Mocs team this season.
Those are Galt's numbers this season. Again, Galt, I remember calling a game last season at Florida State, and Galt was the man under center. He's made the transition. Coleman now on 3rd down. And a 1st down for Chattanooga. Completed on the outside to Chris Pritchford. That goes for 9 yards.
Nice play they drew up there on 3rd down. The motion draws away the inside receiver. Chris Pitchford just gets inside of the corner there. Kareem Jackson and secures the 1st down catch. Like the way the offense started this game, drawing a nice play up there on 3rd down against this Alabama defense, who's been so stingy on 3rd down conversions this year.
From the gun, B.J. Coleman. And here comes the blitz. And again, Coleman saw that blitz coming. He's an experienced quarterback, and he threw it out of bounds over the head of Pitchford. Russ Huesman, a UTC grad. In fact, he played for Bill Oliver, who was a player here at Alabama and also a famous defensive coordinator for that 1992 National Championship team. Also played for Joe Morrison. And he says he feels a little pressure going back to the school where he earned his degree. Four wide on the right side. Coleman with lots of time. Short completion to Pitchford. Let's take a look at our impact players, brought to you by Hampton Inn. At Hampton, we love having you here.
Impact players for UT Chattanooga. Blue Cooper, the guy we talked about earlier, he's the hard-nosed wide receiver, has 82 catches for this offense this season. On defense, Joseph Thornton's a 4-year starter for the Mocs. He's making his 38th consecutive start today, and the defensive end. The defensive end we saw there before the referees called, Josh Beard. He's had 12 sacks this year for the Mocs defense after only accumulating 8 tackles last year. They lit a fire into this guy after the 2nd game of the season, and he's gone nuts.
That's Sloan Allison. He was hearing from his coach, Russ Huesman, after that penalty. extended those arms on the push. That's a 15-yard one that wipes out the last play. Coach Huseman really is a terrific guy to speak to, but I sense that, like most coaches, he's got a dark side. He gets after him. A rare running play for Chattanooga. Awa, freshman from Marietta, true freshman, gets thrown for a 2-yard loss. Corey Reamer came rolling in there on the stop.
Doug, you mentioned earlier that Chattanooga does not do a very good job of running the football. They lost their starting running back, Brian Fitzgerald, earlier in the season to a foot injury against Sanford. Since that time, they've had very little success. In fact, last week against the Citadel, as you mentioned, only 12 running plays, 6 of those in a 4-minute offense at the end. So we won't expect them to see a whole lot of running plays from that offense today.
3rd down and a country mile, 27 yards to go. Coleman again with time, the short pass. It is complete, but Blue Cooper is dropped immediately. So the Mocs will punt the football. Javi Arenas will go deep. Arenas, the premier punt return man in the country, needs 172 yards, punt return yards, to surpass Wes Welker, the NCAA record. Did it at Texas Tech, just over 1,700 yards. Mike Hammonds will kick it away for Chattanooga. He's averaged just under 40 yards a punt this season. A high spiraling kick that takes an Alabama bounce, and it's down at the 49-yard line, just a 32-yard punt. When we come back, we'll talk about number 22. Could he be Alabama's first ever Heisman Trophy winner? We're scoreless in the first quarter in Tuscaloosa, and there's Mark Ingram, number 22. Could he become Alabama's first ever Heisman Trophy winner, Chris?
I think there's a pretty good chance he could. He's played very well, especially against SEC teams this year. He has a chance to be on the big stage over the next couple weeks, and that'll certainly go a long way in determining if he does or if he does not win that first Heisman Trophy for the University of Alabama.
Against the top 25 teams on the schedule this year, close to 180 yards a game. Again, the play fake to Ingram, and McElroy's forced out of the pocket, looking for Julio, and bounces in front of Julio Jones at the 20-yard line. Let's go back to the SEC Network studio. Rob. All right, Rob, thank you. Somewhat of a surprise, that game in Little Rock, by the way. The other home for the Hogs of Arkansas. And Ingram now busts to the outside, his second carry of the day. Finding a lot of room on the outside. Shifty and powerful as ever. Picks up 9 yards.
A lot of people don't give credit to Mark Ingram for just how quick he is. You see that little side shuffle step. He's just as good laterally as he is running downhill against people, running people over. Very physical, but I think it's that lateral step that kind of separates him from the rest of the backs in the SEC.
3rd down and just a yard for a first down. Ingram spins forward for the first down. So hard to bring down in that initial hit. Picks up 3 yards. Let's look now at our impact players, brought to you by the Hampton Inn. At Hampton, we love having you here.
Tough to choose impact players for Alabama. So many good ones. Mark Ingram, we just talked about him. He has over 1,500 all-purpose yards this year. Julio Jones, the big wide receiver, suffered from the sophomore slump early, but has played well of late. And Rolando McClain, the beast on the Alabama defense. Prototypical linebacker, 6'4", 260, runs sideline to sideline for this defense.
So Ingram now in the Wildcat. That's Preston Dial lined up at the H-back, or at least the blocking back, and Ingram gets tripped up on the right side. Had some real estate, but they got him down around the ankles. Picks up 3. For the Mocs defensively, they're small in stature, and they don't match up well with Alabama, but you'll see their starters at the top of the screen. Russ Huesman is a defensive-minded coach. He came from Richmond, where they won the national title on the 1AA level a year ago. So he stressed bringing back tough defense to Chattanooga. McElroy back at quarterback. Here comes Ingram over the left side. Looking for some blocks there from Julio Jones and Colin Peak, and didn't get them. Nice stop by Jordan Tippett.
Good job by safety Jordan Tippett of coming up and filling the hole in run support there. He's been their leader in the secondary this year. He's played at the free safety position where he is now, played strong safety. They've had to move him all over the secondary because of injury this year.
Mike McCoy is wide to the right for the Crimson Tide. Marquise Mays is wide left, and Julio Jones in the slot. Lower part of your screen. McElroy looking at Julio all the way. Now decides to run it. Takes a pretty good shot. Picks up 6 yards on the scramble.
Alabama tried to go with 4 verticals here, looking for Julio Jones down the middle, but nobody was open. McElroy tried to pick up what he could. Looks like Alabama's going to go for it here on 4th and short.
Two tight ends, Michael Williams, the freshman, and Colin Peak, the senior, in there. Ingram and that wildcat look again. There's the fake right up the gut. And it appears Ingram gets the first down. Fontaliga on the stop for the Mocs. You know, yesterday, Chris, you and I went to the Bryant Museum, and they do have a Heisman Trophy in the Bryant Museum. It's that of John David Crow, who played for Coach Bryant at Texas A&M. That's the only Heisman winner he ever coached.
Yeah, I like what Coach Bryant used to say about Heisman Trophy winners. They don't have Heisman Trophy winners at Alabama. They just have winners.
Quickly to the outside. McElroy to Julio Jones. Julio trying for extra yardage. Gets knocked down after a 2-yard pickup. Joel Bradford on the stop for Chattanooga.
You see the twin receiver set out here. The bubble screen is something that they've been utilizing a lot here lately. This offense, whether it be the wide receiver screen with Julio on the outside or the bubble screen to the inside, they've done a good job of breaking those plays, including one against LSU in the second half of that game that gave them the eventual lead that helped them win that game.
2nd and 7. First carry for Trent Richardson. Richardson built in the same mold of Ingram. Hard to bring down. Julio Jones looking at the first 6 games. Remember, he got dinged up against Florida International on that reverse, got a shot in the knee, and so he was a little slow to recover. Last 3 games, though, he looks very good.
Yeah, he's done very well the last 3 games. A lot of focus on him early. In fact, when we talked to Jim McElwain about his start to the season, they felt like at some point in times they were maybe forcing it to him a little bit too much. It's opened up, especially with the emergence of Marquise Mays, as we mentioned, and Darius Hanks has done a good job as well of drawing some of that attention away from him, and he's had a big couple ball games over the last 3 for Alabama.
So it's a first down for Alabama. They are in the red zone now at the 17. It has been a trouble spot this season.
Yeah, the last 5 ball games down inside the 20. Only 2 touchdowns in 13 trips. Have had to settle for a lot of field goals. And as you get into talking about Auburn and Florida and potentially a national championship game, you got to score touchdowns when you get in the red zone.
McElroy with a quick pitch out to Trent Richardson. He gets down inside the 5-yard line, close to the 3-yard line. Young man from Pensacola, Florida, gets that turf stuck in his face mask. He's a load like Ingram.
The thing that I like about this Alabama offensive line is how athletic they are. You see the offensive line being able to get out in front of Richardson there, sealing off that Chattanooga defense and getting Alabama down to the 2-yard line. I love this offensive line, one of the best in the country.
2 tight ends and the fullback in there in front of Richardson. He's going behind those big blockers, and he works his way in for the touchdown. fifth rushing touchdown of the season for young Trent Richardson. Nothing fancy, Chris. They just went right at him.
No, power football right there. We're going to go back and take a look at the replay here in a minute. When we do, you'll see that right side of the offensive line dominate the front for Chattanooga, just pushing them into the end zone.
Lee Tiffin with the extra point, and Alabama on top 7-0. Again, Trent Richardson and Ingram, what a terrific 1-2 punch. That's a 15-yard run that set up the touchdown. And then the bulldozer for 6. Alabama on top 7-0, and you're watching the SEC Network Game of the Week brought to you by Wrangler. It was an 11-play, 51-yard march. 9 running plays. Pretty impressive, Chris.
Yeah, that's that push that we talked about in the open. You mentioned the size advantage that Alabama has on the front line there. 300 pounds, 6'5" average for that offensive line, just 260 for the front four of Chattanooga. So they have a big advantage when it comes to getting some push in the rushing game.
Lee Tiffin, one of those 26 seniors playing his last game at Bryant-Denny Stadium, boots this one into the end zone. You know, all these seniors have a lot of adrenaline today. As you look at Russ Huesman, first year as head coach. Chattanooga, a member of the Southern Conference. And they're not too terribly far from Tuscaloosa. Beautiful city, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Close to 10,000 enrolled at Chattanooga. 135 miles southeast of Nashville, and about 200 miles or so from Tuscaloosa.
Kind of in the middle of SEC country there. A lot of those fans in that area are fans of Tennessee's or Alabama's or Georgia's. So this is an important game for them. They get a chance to have some exposure to the rest of the country and potentially help their recruiting effort.
B.J. Coleman looks for Blue Cooper. That's been a combination all year, and that falls on the turf, so that's incomplete. Let's check in now with the SEC Network studio. Joe Adams, one of those 3 sophomore wide receivers that really makes the future look so bright. And if Mallett sticks around and comes back next year, look out for Arkansas. Rear running play for the Mocs goes nowhere on second down, maybe a yard. Ryan Mallett and company have turned things around for the Razorbacks. We were there last week, Chris, in Fayetteville. And talking to Bob Petrino and company, they're excited about the future.
Yeah, they got a chance to be very good in the next couple of years. They play a lot of sophomore and freshmen. I think the big thing will be whether Ryan Mallett decides to come back for another season or decides to go to the NFL. If he does, and they can get a little bit of help on defense, they got a chance to win the West, in my opinion.
There's Rolando McClain, the quarterback of this defensive unit, calls all the signals. He's a bona fide superstar. Now in pass coverage, Coleman looks opposite of McClain. That's complete, a short completion. The Jar Galt goes for 5 yards.
Chattanooga likes to spread the field, 5 wides, empty backfield. They just run the under route there to Galt. And Galt, the interesting story, as we mentioned before, the former quarterback last year had a hard time getting beaten out by B.J. Coleman. Didn't do much this season, but went to the coaching staff about 3 weeks ago and said, look, I want to contribute in whatever way that I can. They moved him to receiver. Last week he had a big game against the Citadel, 7 catches, and already today getting involved in the offense as well.
Mike Hammonds boots this one much better than the first one, and Javi Arenas fields it at the 29 and then goes down almost immediately. That's a 42-yard boot. Nice coverage by the Mocs. Justin Buckhalter on the stop. McElroy and company on the attack. We return to Tuscaloosa. Alabama takes over, leading 7-0. The last drive, the touchdown march, 9 running plays.
Yeah, that first series, Alabama threw 2 incompletions and went 3 and out. The next time they decided to come back and do what they do best, that's running the football. As you mentioned, 9 runs, just 2 passes, and spread it around pretty evenly there. as Richardson ends up carrying it in for the touchdown.
McElroy back on the field at quarterback. Ingram line up behind him. As you see Trent Richardson on the sidelines, at least for the start of this drive. Dial in motion. McElroy goes deep to Julio Jones, who leaps and pulls it down. Buster screen on the coverage for Chattanooga. An acrobatic grab by Julio Jones, 44 yards.
Nick Saban mentioned to us yesterday that they want to take more shots. Here you see him letting one fly to Julio Jones. That's just a great play by a big, strong, athletic wide receiver. Not bad coverage, in fact. That's Skrine right there. Just a big guy going up and getting the ball.
Again, two tight ends. Ingram running behind the left side of that offensive line. Breaks a tackle, and he's still rumbling into the end zone. 25 yards. That's strong.
That's Mark Ingram football right there. Big, powerful guy, those legs driving, and as we talked about before, been so good after contact. Half his yards have come after defenders have gotten a lick on him, and he just carries 2 or 3 Chattanooga guys into the end zone.
Lee Tiffin, his second extra point, and it's 14-0. Ingram's running behind that left side of the offensive line. Big James Carpenter at left tackle, and Mike Johnson, the left guard, is outstanding. And again, set up by that great grab from Julio Jones. One more look. Could it be another Heisman winner in the Southeastern Conference? So Chattanooga now tries to regroup. That's their defensive coordinator, Adam Fuller. He worked with Coach Huseman at Richmond. You see Mark Ingram got those 5 stitches last week against Mississippi State when his helmet popped off, and we're seeing a lot of that in football these days. Those bigger helmets that are designed to help avoid concussions are coming off rather easy.
Yeah, it's been an epidemic around college football this year, and in fact, fans are starting to notice. A lot of people asking me why the helmets are popping off so easily this year. That's the biggest risk that you run, especially when you're a ball carrier. After that thing pops off, having to take licks from other defenders, and Ingram caught a bunch of stitches in that forehead last week.
Screen and Awa deep for the Mocs from his own end zone. 1 foot was in the end zone. Here comes screen. Nice return up around the 27-yard line. We'll call it a 28-yard return. And the Mocs a year ago, 1-11. Now they host the championship game on their field every year, Finley Stadium, but they haven't been to the playoffs in a long time. This guy may take him there next season, B.J. Coleman.
He's got the right attitude. Again, we talked in the open about his commitment to studying and looking at his opponent on tape. He's the leader, and as I said before, he really upset some guys. Guys really didn't know how to take him, especially when you come to a new environment where guys aren't used to winning and doing the little things to be successful. He's gotten those guys on track and created a sense of responsibility amongst those players.
Pitchford in motion to reverse the double reverse. And again, Galt throws the pick to Corey Reamer. Corey Reamer has had a fabulous season, playing his last home game. And what has this guy not done this year?
Perfect ending to his home career here at Alabama. And you see them trying to get a little tricky again with Galt, the former quarterback, throwing the ball. Reamer just does a good job of reading Galt's eyes as he tries to force one down the sideline. And we talked to defensive coordinator Kirby Smart yesterday about Reamer. He's a guy that really has exceeded expectations here at Alabama, has played a big part of special teams, but this year with Dante Hightower being out, he's filled in admirably at that linebacker position.
McElroy again gives off to Mark Ingram. And he just carries the pile, running over that left side. Again, Mike Johnson is such an outstanding offensive lineman, the left guard. Jordan Tippett on the stop. That was a 7-yard push. Ingram is solid. And that offensive line is getting better each and every week. Maybe not as powerful as last year's, according to Nick Saban, but they're very athletic. For 300-pounders, they move very well. Ingram for 4 that last drive. Again, Julio Jones on the outside.
Julio Jones reminds me of a former teammate that I played with, Plexico Burris. Big, long guy. Those long strides can get deep and catch the ball when it's up for grabs. And then Ingram, we talked about the 2 impact players for Alabama on offense. Those 2 guys led them on a 2-play drive for a touchdown to put Alabama up 14-0.
Ingram lines up to the left of McElroy. Takes another handoff. Kind of wiggles his way forward for a pickup of 2. Smigelski makes the stop for Chattanooga. Again, Greg McElroy, the quarterback at Alabama. There's definitely pressure on the quarterback at the University of Alabama. And here's a guy who's already earned his degree in 3 years, Chris. And some say he should apply for a Rhodes Scholarship. He's already won the award for the outstanding marketing student in the business school. Smart guy. Here's the fake. Lots of time for McElroy into the end zone. Touchdown, Julio Jones. "19 yards, way too easy."
They do a good job with the play action. We saw a lot of that last week out of Arkansas. If you look at the high angle here, you got 2 receivers to the top. Freeze it right there for me. The inside guy's going to draw the safety and the corner away from her. The post on the backside by Julio leaves him in one-on-one coverage with the leverage on the outside. That's just the easy play for this Alabama offense.
It's now 21-0 as McElroy throws his 14th touchdown pass of the year. Lots of time, Chris.
That's the key to this Alabama passing game. You got to give McElroy some time, and the play action sucks those linebackers up, gives them a little bit of that time as well, and they hit Julio Jones on another big play.
Jim McElwain, the offensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide, told us yesterday he loves McElroy and says, hey, the guy's a winner. He's never lost. How can you complain? But in talking about Julio Jones, said here's a guy with so many great things written about him and talk about him on a weekly basis, and yet he is, there's McElwain. He's the hardest worker in practice.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive with a guy as much accolades as this guy has received in his first year and a half. For him to be as humble and as driven as he is every day in practice. Coach McElwain said this guy never takes a play off. He's a fierce competitor, and you can see his desire to win every play out there on the field.
He is put together. Works extremely hard in the weight room. Spends extra time in the practice field working on the timing with McElroy. Line drive kick by Tiffin. Brought out to around the 27 as we check in with Rob Stone in the studio. Rob?
Rob, I appreciate that there, man. Give me a little Florida update. Tim Tebow finishing out his career next week at home against Florida State. That'll be senior day for the Gators. What a career that guy's had.
1st and 10, B.J. Coleman. Hasn't been sacked yet. He throws so quickly, almost throws an interception. Mark Barron knocks that down. Speaking of Tim Tebow breaking all the records, 79 touchdown passes, and beating Herschel's record now with 54 on the ground.
Yeah, that's the impressive number. Only one guy in FCS or FBS history has ever scored more touchdowns rushing the ball from the quarterback position. That's Eric Crouch from Nebraska. But Tebow, just an unbelievable competitor, really the heart and soul of that Florida team.
Florida and Alabama will meet in 2 weeks at the Georgia Dome for the Southeastern Conference Championship. Chris played against Alabama in the Dome. Awa to the left side, goes nowhere. We are live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Bryant-Denny Stadium, 92,000 strong on hand for the final home game. 26 seniors saying goodbye to the capacity crowd today. Doug Bell alongside Chris Doering. Chris, the former Florida Gator wide receiver. Wherever we've gone on campus, yesterday at the Bryant Museum, I introduced you to Clem Griska, the curator who played at Alabama and coached with Coach Bryant. And he knew who you were. He remembered the play.
It wasn't the warmest reception, but I tell you what, that's always a good thing when you go into a competitor's backyard, that they remember you and know who you are. And I appreciate those guys. Had a great time looking through that museum. A very impressive history here at the University of Alabama.
That's the end of an impressive first quarter for Alabama, the second-ranked team in the nation. They've done it on the ground, power football, and they lead Chattanooga 21-0. We're starting the second quarter in Tuscaloosa. Clouds have moved over the stadium, but still a very pleasant afternoon to watch football. Rolando McClain, the quarterback of this defense, totally understands this Nick Saban complexity that is all the signals, which makes him just so valuable. There's the blitz. Nobody blocked him. The pass goes incomplete. Coleman had Pitchford. Saw that blitz coming and saw his hot receiver, didn't he?
Yeah, that was a good job by B.J. Coleman of getting it out. Alabama was bringing 6 against the empty backfield here. Nobody could pick one of those guys up. Coleman's got to get it out hot. Made the right read. Pitchford just got to make that catch.
Mike Hammonds will punt it away for Chattanooga with that unusual alignment. They have 3 players at the top of the screen. Gets it away without a lot of pressure as they set up the return for Arenas, who fields it at the 34. Bust free. This is what the crowd came to see. There goes the senior. Scampered into the end zone. Touchdown, Javi Arenas.
Doug, you pointed out there about one of the premier punt returners in the country. This guy's going to get drafted extremely high, not only because of his ability to return punts, but a great guy in the secondary as well. But you pointed out that unique alignment up at the top. That's ultimately what came back and got him. We'll take a look at it here after the break.
Lee Tiffin has been busy. It's 28-0 after that 66-yard punt return by Javi Arenas. You know, when Saban came to campus, Arenas was really just a return man and really had no position, but he's now turned into not only a superior defender, but he's gotten even better in this department.
And Arenas was a guy that wanted to quit playing football, wanted to leave Alabama. Nick Saban had to talk him into staying. And what a decision that was for him to stay around here. Certainly has had a great career and an even brighter future at the next level in the NFL.
As we sat down with Nick Saban yesterday, Chris, and I said, do you think this guy's going to be a defensive back on Sundays next season? Without hesitation, he said, no doubt.
Oh, he's improved what he's done in the secondary this year. And when you're surrounded by as many good defensive players as Arenas is in that secondary, those guys, they compete a little bit. You know, when you get in the meeting room, you don't want to make a mistake that you have to own up to with the rest of those guys watching the tape. And that competition in the secondary has driven all of those guys to be better players this season.
7 punt returns for touchdowns, a Southeastern Conference record for the one and only Javier Arenas. Screen again, fields it just shy of the 5-yard line, brings it out and almost gets his head taken off. Jarrell Harris came down and like a missile and flew at him.
Doug, you noticed the 3 split out guys in this alignment here. They tried to punt it away from that alignment and ultimately ended up getting them in trouble because they didn't have contained down the left sideline. Good job by the return team of setting that up, but you would think that they would want to punt in a normal situation to that 3 split out guys set.
1st and 10. B.J. Coleman from the 26. The Mocs have 1 first down so far today. Rushing 4. Hanging on to that one is Blue Cooper. Picks up 8 yards.
Blue Cooper's the guy that really wanted to have a good ball game today. It's his last ball game as a senior for Chattanooga. 82 catches heading into this one. A guy that's been plagued by injuries kind of throughout the entire season, but just keeps on grinding out there. Dropped a couple early. Nice to see him get on the stat line with his first catch of the afternoon.
And he came out of that huddle limping a bit after that last stop. And Coleman forced to throw before his receiver was open, looking for Garrett Hughes. He was knocked to the turf. Ali Sharif came in there and knocked Coleman to the ground.
Doug, you can see Alabama's committed. Every time Chattanooga goes to the empty backfield, they're going to bring more than Chattanooga can pick up. That's something we're going to continue to watch. B.J. Coleman's going to have to get the ball out quickly when they go empty as they're lined up again here.
Looking for only their 2nd first down of the first half. 3rd and 2. That ball goes out of bounds and incomplete. Again, this Alabama secondary gives quarterbacks so many variations, so many looks. It is confusing even for a veteran like B.J. Coleman. And on top of that, they're really good.
That's the biggest thing, is that they're very good, but you mentioned
personal foul, run the passer, number 57, defense, hit the quarterback in the head, 15-yard penalty from the previous spot, automatic first down.
You mentioned the multiple looks.
Marcel Darius with a blow to the head on B.J. Coleman, and that draws the automatic flag.
Yeah, that's something you can't do right there. Bails the team out on 3rd down, but the multiple looks that Alabama goes with are tough for any quarterback. And I asked Kirby Smart whether he was going to dumb it down a little bit for this ball game. They said, no, we've actually want to keep challenging these guys to get better each week. We'll have our whole arsenal in this week.
And the draw play, first time we've seen that today. J.J. Jackson picks up 5. There's Rolando McClain. Again, the first year with Nick Saban, did not understand the system, the complexity of it, and was somewhat confused on the field. But they said now he calls the signals before they give him the signals.
Well, McClain was a freshman at that point in time, having to play out there. And now these guys have had 3 years in the system. They all know who the leader is on the defense. Rolando McClain calls all the checks, knows what every player on the team does on the defensive side of the ball.
Back to the ground game. First play in Alabama territory, goes for 3 yards. That's Kerma, the fullback. Here's what Rowe has done today.
I like the way that he kind of quarterbacks. He's the traffic signal caller out there, moving guys around, getting in on the tackles, but really it's that understanding of what Nick Saban wants to do, almost without him having to tell Rolando McClain at this point in time. Having an extension of himself out there on the field is really what's made Alabama so good on defense this season.
Another 3rd down for the Mocs. Again, pressure. And B.J. Coleman hangs in there, finds Pitchford. That goes for 7 yards and another first down. Give Coleman credit because they're coming at him.
Well, you mentioned the 9 sacks that they've given up this season with as many times as they throw the football. That's not a whole lot, but I asked Coach Sutterfield, the offensive coordinator, if that was because of the line. He said, no, that's because B.J. Coleman stands in there and delivers the ball while he's got people coming all around him. And he said today in this one, he doesn't expect to have more than 2 seconds to throw the football on any given down.
The Mocs call their first timeout. This is the first time in 50 years the Mocs have played here in Tuscaloosa. 10th time overall the two schools have met, but the first time in 50 years they met here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And this is eerily similar to that game 50 years ago. Coach Bryant's team had a terrific defense and shut out the Mocs 13-0. In fact, the Mocs only got in Alabama territory twice that afternoon. It was 7 points back in 1950 and 52. The last meeting was at Legion Field in 1994 when a guy named Terrell Owens was a wide receiver for the Mocs.
Didn't help him much in that game either, the 42-13 in that one. And certainly this is the best case of David and Goliath that I think you can see. And I asked some of the coaches, how do you prepare for a game like this? Because you know you're overmatched, you know you don't have much chance to win, but yet you got to send your guys out there. And what they said is, look, we're going to compete on every play. We're going to enjoy the opportunity. A lot of the Chattanooga players were taking pictures of the stadium yesterday in the walkthrough. But I think the funniest thing about it is that their defensive coordinator, Adam Fuller, said, look, you play well, you're going to be on ESPN. You mess up, you're going to be on ESPN. This is a great opportunity for these kids that really don't normally get this kind of exposure.
There is a connection between the two schools. Three of the head coaches at Chattanooga were either coaches or players at Alabama. Harold Red Drew, Frank Thomas, the legendary Frank Thomas, who won a couple of national championships at Alabama, also coached at Chattanooga, and Bill Oliver, brother Bill, now retired, living in Lake Martin, a couple hours from here. He was a terrific head coach at Chattanooga. 44 total yards for the Mocs, 36 on this drive, so they put something together. Again, the quick hitter that goes incomplete. Jared Galt was the intended receiver. Again, we mentioned Terrell Owens. And in college, it was Terrell from Alexander City, Alabama. And he also played basketball for Mac McCarthy at Chattanooga. Was a terrific athlete. Buddy Green was his head coach at Chattanooga. Buddy Green now at the Naval Academy as a defensive coordinator. And Terrell had a nice career at Chattanooga.
Part of that great 96 class of wide receivers in the NFL draft. Marvin Harrison, T.O., Chris Doering, you know, those names are very similar in the NFL history.
Second down. Coleman had his man, but it goes incomplete. Speaking of Owens, whose biggest game, his last game when Chattanooga beat Marshall, when Chad Pennington was the quarterback and Randy Moss was the receiver. He had 4 touchdown grabs. But last week, this guy, Blue Cooper, passes Owens on the all-time receiving list in Chattanooga history. And he got a little message from T.O.
Yeah, got a tweet from T.O. And in fact, Blue Cooper didn't even have a Twitter account. He had to actually go out and sign up to get a Twitter account just so he could correspond and thank T.O. for the kind words.
Third down. Crowd making some noise. Coleman again through the hands of Blue Cooper. This is what T.O. sent Blue Cooper last week. Congrats to Blue Cooper for your football accomplishments today. And then Blue Cooper responded after he went out and got the tweet account, right?
Yeah, he responded back, said thanks for giving him some love. Keep balling, you know. T.O.'s up there frustrated right now in Buffalo, so trying to return the favor and get him back feeling a little bit better about his situation.
4th and 10, the Mocs way down, decide to go for it, and it goes incomplete, so they'll turn it over on downs. Looking for Pitchford. And again, 3 times B.J. Coleman was victimized. His receivers dropped what appeared to be very good passes. So Alabama dominating Chattanooga as we expected, 28-0. Second-ranked Alabama on top, 28-0 as we look at Julio Jones. And let's look now at our Good Hands play of the day, brought to you by Allstate.
Yeah, Julio Jones in one-on-one coverage out there, and pretty good coverage by the defensive back. But when you got Julio Jones at 6'4", he can go up and get anything, and then they come back to him for the second touchdown of the day. Having a big day, continuing the hot streak that he's had over the last game and a half.
Julio putting up huge numbers today, and it started in the second half of that LSU game. He broke free on the play that broke the game open, and then last week got behind the defender in Starkville. And this is good news for Alabama as they get ready for some really big games, starting with the Iron Bowl next Friday in Auburn. Trent Richardson in there and takes the handoff, going over the right side. Great seal blocking by the tight end, Colin Peak. Nagelski on the stop, but Richardson picks up 10 yards. That's a first down.
Richardson is a guy that the coaching staff is incredibly high on. They say he's got a bright future here. I'm just impressed with how many great running backs that they have on this roster. Not only Ingram and Richardson, Upchurch has played well, and they got some young guys that they're going to be looking to in the future. But Richardson is going to be the guy, according to McElwain, in the future.
Back to Richardson, right up the gut. Right behind William Vlachos, the center. Tippett on the stop. That's an 8-yard pickup. And you see the turf here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. A lot of rain, an unusual amount of rain weeks ago here in Alabama. It's really gone on for about 6 weeks. And the turf is very thin. They have that ryegrass, which makes it look very green, but it makes it also very slick. But it's a thin surface out there.
Yeah, as a receiver, you don't necessarily like that ryegrass. It's very slippery, trying to get in and out of breaks. And we saw some guys falling down yesterday for Chattanooga in their walkthrough.
And Richardson moves forward for 4 yards. And you might be thinking, well, this is the last game of the year for Alabama, so no big deal. But the state high school football championships, 6 classifications in the state of Alabama, will be here in a couple of weeks. And they're going to play on this turf.
That's a big deal, too. You know, having the opportunity to host the high school championships is a big recruiting edge for Alabama this year. They want to make this place look as nice as they possibly can for those young men.
Ingram back in there. McElroy looking to Marquise Mays on the outside. First pass not going the way of Julio Jones, looking for Mays. McElroy looks to the sidelines. You know, you think of McElroy and his football talents, but here's a guy who has had only one B in all of his classes here at Alabama. And he laughs. He said that was a B+ in a leadership class, of all things. Ingram running around wide open, middle of the field, looking for a block. And he moves in for another touchdown of 40 yards. It's going to be a big day for Mark Ingram.
You don't think this guy wants to win the Heisman Trophy, having a big afternoon for Alabama already in the first half. You'll see him run the zone play to the front side, but the great thing about zone blocking is you press the hole and you got that cutback alley. Then Ingram gets into the secondary and does the rest himself.
Lee Tiffin makes it 35-0. Again, when we met with Russ Huesman, the head coach for the Mocs, he told us he wasn't sure his team was big enough, talented enough, or strong enough to bring down Ingram, and he was right. It's 35-0, and Mark Ingram now has 102 yards on 11 carries and 2 touchdowns. Pretty fun to watch him run.
No, he's a great running back, and getting an opportunity to watch him here in person operate, the strength and the power and the mobility. He's at the top of my Heisman list right now, especially considering how well he's played against the big team. Top 25 teams this year. He's averaging 178 yards per game in 4 of those ball games. And against SEC opponents, this guy, 7 SEC games, already 5 100-yard games against those opponents.
And look at the yards after contact, over 800 yards.
That was heading into today as well. I think you could probably add about another 70 onto that, as he's been carrying some Chattanooga defenders into the secondary.
Tiffin kicks deep. Joel Bradford, his first return of the afternoon. Bradford finds a gap. And he got nailed. It appeared his mouthpiece came flying out, and a flag is down on the play. 28 on the return. Mark Curlis, our referee today for this Southeastern Conference officiating crew.
During the return, holding number 18, kicking team. 10-yard penalty from the end of the run, first down.
Time now for our Nissan Heisman moment, and for Chris, here's your top 5.
I had a hard time narrowing it down to 3. I went with 5, and this year's Heisman race is about momentum. Guys that are creating a little momentum. Mark Ingram certainly playing well at this point in time. Toby Gerhart, 19 rushing touchdowns. He's second in the FBS right now. And of course, CJ Spiller coming on strong, has a touchdown in all 10 games for Clemson. It's going to be interesting that these guys will all have a chance to impress as the season continues, and just about each of those teams will be in their respective conference championship game, except for Stanford, who obviously doesn't have one in the Pac-10.
1st and 10. B.J. Coleman to the outside. This time Blue Cooper hangs on. And Cooper gets wrestled down by Javi Arenas, along with Eric Anders. You know, Alabama's never had a Heisman winner. That's been the big story over the years. Of course, Coach Bryant played so many players and never really had one guy who carried the load. He had so many talented players, but through the years, David Palmer, who was an outstanding return man for Gene Stallings' national title team, and Jay Barker, they finished in the top 5 in the voting. Also, Johnny Musso, the Italian stallion back in the early 70s, finished in the top 5 of the balloting. But Ingram would certainly be celebrated in Crimson Tide country if he becomes the first. Another running play for Chattanooga, J.J. Jackson.
You know, Doug, it's interesting. A lot of times players put up big numbers against the non-conference opponents that kind of skew their statistics a little bit. But I think it's been the games against SEC opponents that have been so impressive for what Mark Ingram's done this season. If you look at those numbers again, you mentioned 7 SEC games. He's had 5 100-yard games. And against top 25 opponents, 4 of those ball games averaged 178 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns overall. So you can't blame him for putting up big numbers against overmatched opponents.
Coleman again hassled by Rolando McClain.
How about that play by McClain? Looked like he was in the backfield before the snap got there to B.J. Coleman. Rolando McClain coming on the blitz again and almost beats the ball to the quarterback. In fact, not even enough time for Aha to pick up the blitzer.
Awa is a freshman, true freshman, and he's going to learn about picking up those blitzers. You can't just watch him go by. You have to at least try to get out there and chip him somehow, or your quarterback is going to get destroyed. There's the punt from Mike Hammonds. Javi Arenas calls for the fair catch at the 15-yard line, a 41-yard boot. We'll check the flag right around the 50-yard line, right in the huge Alabama logo in the middle of the field here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Again, this place will seat over 100,000 for the season opener in 2010.
Personal foul, rough the snapper, number 36, defense. 15-yard penalty from the previous spot.
You didn't know you weren't allowed to rush this rough the snapper there, were you, Doug?
I tell you, the snapper took a beating on that one.
Those guys aren't allowed when they got their head down. You can't assault the snapper after they snapped the ball, and he got pushed back immediately after it let it go. Take a look here. He just got manhandled into the backfield. Can't do that at the college level.
Brock Oliver was the long snapper for Chattanooga, and he took a tumble. So now it's a first down after the 15-yard penalty. Coleman back in there, quarterback Dyer at running back gets his first carry. We're live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on a cloudy Saturday morning. Second-ranked team in the nation against the Mocs of Chattanooga. Doug Bell alongside Chris Doering. The former Florida Gator played for Steve Spurrier back when they used to tangle with Alabama seemingly every year in the SEC championship. And they'll do it again in a couple of weeks, just like they did a year ago in what was a classic game. Florida won that game in the fourth quarter. As Kerma on the carry for Chattanooga, trying to move that clock and shorten this game a bit, down 35-0. Julio Jones wide open for an early touchdown as Alabama came out of the gates quickly, and then there he is, number 22, Mark Ingram. Already has over 100 yards.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were curious as to how much Ingram and Julio Jones and some of the other starters were going to play this afternoon, but for Nick Saban, his idea was to go ahead and continue with the momentum that they've created, especially on offense in the last couple games, and each of those stars has had a big game up to this point.
Third down and less than a yard. Again, Ingram got those stitches last Saturday night. They stitched him up, and he went back in the game and actually busted free for that 70-yard touchdown run with the stitches. It's over his right eye. And it was hardly noticeable this week, although he's wearing a patch over now, just a protective patch.
His afternoon's probably done after he's eclipsed that 100-yard mark. They wanted to get some younger guys in the ball game if they could, if they got a comfortable lead. But again, it was about going out, taking this game just like they would against any other opponent. And to this point, they've been pretty successful.
Third and less than a yard. Mount Cody, they run right at him, and the big man stands up. Kerma, but the force goes forward, and it's a first down for Chattanooga.
I haven't talked an awful lot about Terrence Cody today so far. Been kind of quiet. I thought he was going to have a big afternoon against this offensive line that's a little undersized, but Chattanooga does a good job of pushing the pile, picking up a first down. This is their deepest penetration of the afternoon. See if Alabama can keep him out of the end zone.
Again, Cody right at 360 pounds. He's going against Austin Wilson, the center, who is 260. It's tough when you're giving up 100 pounds, and Cody manhandles the best in the Southeastern Conference. Back to the ground game. Kerma moves forward on the left side. The only SEC Big East Bowl matchup will take place in Birmingham's historic Legion Field Saturday afternoon, January 2nd. Get your tickets now to the 4th annual PapaJohns.com Bowl. Visit PapaJohns.com for more information.
It's right there in your backyard, Dougie.
Yep, look forward to it. There's talk that perhaps Steve Spurrier in South Carolina will be there. That would be
pretty good draw, right?
Yeah, a 20-year reunion for Spurrier, who coached Duke in the last of the All-American Bowls there 20 years ago before he took the Gator job. That's Bo Dyer, his second carry. Gets it back to the line of scrimmage, and there you see big Terrence Cody, first-team All-American a year ago. Likely to repeat those two big blocks against Tennessee on the field goal, especially the one as time was running out. Might have secured his second first-team All-America honor.
Oh, yeah, he's had a tremendous year for this Alabama defense, and coaching staff, Nick Saban said he's kept his weight down around 360 or so from where he was upwards of about 380 probably at times last year. So he's been much more mobile and able to play a little longer into some of these ball games than he was last year.
Coleman again gets no help from his receiver. Galt gets stripped by Kareem Jackson. Jackson, another one of those outstanding cover corners at Alabama. You have Arenas, Marquise Johnson, Jackson. Dre Kirkpatrick just might be the most gifted of all of the cornerbacks, the defensive backs, but he's just a true freshman out of Gadsden. He'll get an opportunity next season, although he plays quite a bit in the nickel package. Fourth down. Mocs will forego the field goal to try to get to the scoreboard to go for it on fourth down. Rushing 4, and that gets intercepted. Javier Arenas. He's already run a punt back 66 yards for a touchdown, and now An interception, his second of the season for the senior.
How about these seniors today? Javier Arenas, touchdown on the kickoff return, that interception there. Corey Raymer earlier with an interception. They're putting on a show in their last game out here at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Javi all smiles. You know, he's from South Florida. The only offer he had was from Florida Atlantic. Alabama needed a return man. Boy, what a story. It's 35-0 Alabama, and welcome back to the Wrangler SEC Network Game of the Week. And be sure to stay tuned to see which player is selected as the Wrangler 5-star player of the game. It is senior day. 26 seniors saying goodbye to the home crowd. Of course, they have huge games ahead this season, but this is always a special day.
It's interesting, too, when talking to Nick Saban, he was quick to downplay. A lot of people said, oh, these teams have been good because of the 3 recruiting classes that you brought in. He wanted to make sure that he made notice of this group of seniors' commitment. The reason they've won ball games in the last 2 years is because those guys bought in to the program and really have been the centerpiece of this resurgence at Alabama over the last couple years.
McElroy goes to Earl Alexander, and that falls incomplete. Remember, all season long, Champion Apparel has been showcasing the tradition and history of the Southeastern Conference. Today, let's look at Senior Day here at the Capstone. Mount Cody, Nick Saban saying goodbye to Corey Reamer and Javier Arenas. There's Reamer, young man from Hoover, just up the road here in Birmingham. And Chris, I know you remember your last game.
Yeah, very emotional. We played Florida State at home the last game that I played in, and certainly you want to go out having a good effort, but you can't believe how quickly the time flies by. It seems like, you know, just yesterday, guys probably feel like they were just coming in as true freshmen.
Colin Peak with the reception. As you look at Corey Reamer under Nick Saban, pretty good record, 2 10-win seasons. In fact, you have to go back to 73-74, the last time they started 10-0 in back-to-back seasons. But I think most importantly, Chris, of all the records on the field, off the field, 13 of these seniors have gotten their degrees already. That's the most in Division I right now.
Pretty impressive. Nick Saban emphasizes not only the desire for his players to be great players on the field, but be great students in the classroom, and their commitment to getting that education and that degree is one of the main focuses that he has when talking about their roles as college athletes.
Coach Saban, it's really something as we spent the day yesterday in the football complex, and the duties that he has aside from preparing for a football game. I mean, recruits were in. He came to talk to us. He had a speaking engagement at nearby Indian Hills Country Club for a charity function. Then it was back for team meetings. He looked a little weary, but I guess that's the way it goes for head coaches.
I don't think people realize the demand of coaches at the college level, especially at the big-time college level, and the number of things that they have to do in preparing for a game, making sure that they're recruiting for next year as the season rolls on. It can certainly be a grind, but for this guy, it's all about focus. We talked about his talking to his players about their focus. I don't know that I've been around a head coach that's as focused as Nick Saban is.
So it's 1st and 10, a new set of downs for Greg McElroy and the second-ranked Crimson Tide. Another completion, only goes for 3, maybe 4 yards. That's Brandon Gibson, sophomore from Mobile. Only his second catch of the season, as Alabama now gets some younger players into the game. We're likely to see Star Jackson, the backup quarterback for Alabama today. He hasn't played since the North Texas game. Trent Richardson lines up to the left of McElroy. Rifles it to the outside, Mike McCoy. Coming up on the Cellular South halftime report, we'll talk about Tim Tebow making more history. It's the Ohio State-Michigan game, and LSU Ole Miss will be later this afternoon in Oxford. And I think that is just a huge game for both teams.
I'm excited about watching Dexter McCluster against that great LSU defense. Should be a battle of strength against strength. And I don't know if there's a hotter team in the conference offensively than what Ole Miss has been since they moved Dexter McCluster to the tailback position.
McElroy to Trent Richardson, who takes 3 solid hits and is still going. That excites this big crowd. They really appreciate the effort. Very knowledgeable crowd, as you might imagine, here in Tuscaloosa. Look at Richardson.
This is part of the reason they like Richardson so much. What a competitor this guy is. Broke about 4 tackles there and eventually took probably, there were guys coming off the sideline there, 12, 13 guys to bring Richardson down at the end of that play.
P.J. Fitzgerald will punt for only the 2nd time today. He's a senior. Lee Tiffin is a senior. So next season, Alabama will be looking for a new kicker and a new punter. And until you don't have an experienced kicker, you don't realize how important of a job that is. A high punt, he was trying to pooch inside the 20-yard line, and that one didn't go the way he was planning. It goes out of bounds at the 22, only a 23-yard punt. There's Fitzgerald, senior out of Coral Springs, Florida. Again, one of those 26 seniors. And he's had some big games this season. Fitzgerald averaging almost 42 yards a kick. That was not his best. He does not have a kick block this season. We'd like to recognize P.J. Fitzgerald as our SEC Network Scholar Athlete of the Game. ESPN Regional TV will contribute $1,000 to the General Scholarship Fund of the University of Alabama on his behalf. Once again, congratulations to P.J. Fitzgerald, one of those 13 players with a degree, a management degree in May, a 4.0 GPA. Back to the ground game for Chattanooga. Kerma. Again, when you talk about P.J. Fitzgerald, here's a guy who's going to graduate school at the University of Alabama. And we mentioned that earlier, one of 13 players who've already earned their degrees among this senior class. Greg McElroy will also be going to graduate school. Has already earned his degree in 3 years at the university. J.J. Jackson in there, tailback for the Mocs, and he carries it right into the teeth of that Alabama defense. Gets thrown for a 2-yard loss.
You can definitely tell the focus of this Chattanooga offense has changed. Early in the game, we saw them throwing the football just about every down. I think at this point in time, they just want to try to shorten the ball game a little bit, run the clock as much as they can, and they pretty much settled on handing the ball off and allowing the Alabama defense to stop them. Not a whole lot of fight that they're putting up at this point in the ball game.
And time ticks down at the end of the first half. Russ Huesman and company find themselves in a 35-0 hole. Now let's go to the Cellular South halftime report. Here's Rob Stone, Big Matt Stinchcomb in the SEC Network studio, guys. Today's SEC Network Game of the Week is presented by Wrangler. Alabama on top, 35-0 over the Mocs of Chattanooga. Doug Bell alongside Chris Doring, another packed house, saying goodbye to the Crimson Tide today. Of course, next week is the Auburn game in Auburn and the SEC Championship, and then who knows where. You know, coming into this game, we talked about it off the top. The last 6 quarters have been very good for this Alabama offense. Big play capabilities, and they showed more of that today.
Yeah, a lot of big plays in the first half for Alabama from their big stars as well. Julio Jones got them going early in the ball game with his first touchdown of the afternoon. He caught an earlier pass as well. 2 big passing plays in this one. And then the story really has been about the Heisman Trophy candidate, Mark Ingram. 100 yards rushing in the first half, couple of TDs, one for 25 yards. and another for 40 yards on the afternoon. Those two guys have certainly been dominant, and it's nice to see Alabama continuing to show that big play capability that we talked about in the open.
Let's look at our first half stats. Brought to you by Crystal. Nothing like it as you look at the two stars on offense, Julio and Ingram. And here are the numbers, again, brought to you by Crystal.
Yeah, obviously a big start on the ground offensively. 159 yards rushing. Chattanooga has managed to do very little on offense, but kind of what we expected, Doug. I think obviously two different caliber of talents, and Alabama has gone out there and done what we thought they'd do and pretty much dominate the first half.
Julio Jones is rocking to the huge speakers here at Bryant-Denny Stadium, having a good time on senior day. He's not a senior. He'll be back. We should see perhaps Star Jackson, the backup quarterback for Alabama in the second half. I think for Mark Ingram, 11 carries, 102 yards, a couple of touchdowns. His day is finished.
Yeah, his day is finished for sure. You talk about Alabama playing Auburn next week and then the SEC championship against Florida. You can't run the risk of getting number 22 hurt.
Again, the numbers for Julio and Ingram, the two big play strikes, the dynamic duo. And that's what they hope each and every week. Of course, it's going to get a little tougher as they look ahead to Auburn and Florida and perhaps, who knows, in the next bowl game.
Yeah, the competition will certainly improve over the next couple weeks, but it's the continuation of those big explosive plays that Jim McElwain, the offensive coordinator, spoke to us about yesterday.
So we get geared up now for the start of the second half. Lee Tiffin will boot away for the Tide, up 35-0. Again, Screen fields that ball at the 2-yard line. Actually, that's Joel Bradford who brings it just shy of the 30-yard line. So we'll call it a 30-yard return. And B.J. Coleman, I think, was victimized in that first half, Chris. At least a half a dozen times he had open receivers, put the ball right there, and they dropped it.
Yeah, his statistics maybe don't indicate the kind of half that he had, but had a lot of pressure all afternoon long. Guys coming free. He stood in there and delivered a strike, especially on his hot routes and side adjusts and the 3 steps with pressure. Guys just didn't make catches for him.
Again, B.J. Coleman is the transfer from the University of Tennessee. And because he transferred to a 1AA school, there's an interception. A pick by Justin Woodall, his 3rd interception of the season. And Alabama's in business right away.
Doug, I might have spoke too soon as far as giving the accolades to B.J. Coleman and not putting much of the blame on him. Just a poor decision by B.J. Coleman. Nobody open, came back late, and you see, looking at his receiver the entire way, kind of telegraphed that one right there for the interception. Easy pick, and like you said, Alabama here in business early in the second half.
Justin Woodall, another one of those talented defensive backs, the free safety for Alabama. They are so good. That clearly is the strength of this football team. New quarterback in there now, Star Jackson. Hands off to Trent Richardson. Picks up 4 yards, and good look at Jackson, who is a specimen. When you watch him on the field before the game, you realize how big of a young man he is. 6'3", right around 215 pounds. And he played well against North Texas, but hasn't played a lot since then. Strictly as a backup to McElroy. Trent Richardson. Again, doing his Mark Ingram impersonation, breaking tackles. He really does almost look like a clone of Mark Ingram.
Yeah, got kind of that same small, powerful type body. And again, the coach is very high on Trent Richardson in the future that he has in this Alabama offense. Should get extensive playing time along with Roy Upchurch here in the second half. So it'll be a good opportunity for those guys to put some statistics together for themselves.
Upchurch in there right now. Lines up behind Star Jackson. Mike McCoy is wide to the left for Alabama. Upchurch knocked out of bounds, and that'll stop the clock. Just a 2-yard pickup. Tippett on the stop for the Mocs.
Doug, you talked a little bit about Star Jackson earlier on in that North Texas game. Got an opportunity to play in the first half which gave him some invaluable experience at running the 2-minute offense. Those are some things that, you know, you don't really get to do much as a backup, and you never know. You're only one play away from having to be in there and being a #1 guy. This is some good quality work for him as he'll handle most of the snaps the second half.
And Upchurch, he gets wrapped up. Again, that's Jordan Tippett, a second-year man out of Huntsville, Alabama. Probably the best secondary man for Chattanooga. Had a big season. He's made 2 straight tackles.
Tippett has 5 interceptions on the season, amongst the tops in the SoCon. And we early in the ball game did a great job filling against Alabama's run game. We've seen him make a lot of plays this afternoon for that Chattanooga defense.
Star Jackson from the shotgun. Upchurch is wide left. Earl Alexander at the bottom of your screen. Jackson avoided the first sack and then goes down for a loss. That's a 5-yard loss. Nick Craig on the stop. So Lee Tiffin will come on for the field goal. He's in the running for not only first-team All-America honors, Lee Tiffin, but also the Lou Groza Award given to the top kicker in the country. This will be a 41-yard attempt. He has had a big season, Alabama's all-time scoring leader. If he makes this, he'll be tied with Philip Doyle. And he is. That's good. He's now tied with Philip Doyle for the most field goals, 78 in a career at Alabama. Another one of those seniors playing in his last home game. Alabama on top, 38-0. It's 38-0 after that 41-yard kick by Lee Tiffin. And he has had a sensational senior season.
Yeah, what a year this guy's had, especially in the last 6 ball games. Been called on a lot. We talked about some of the red zone struggles. That's only led to production from him, though. That was his 16th field goal in the last 6 ball games, so he's certainly been very busy and one of the more accurate kickers, not only in the conference, but in the entire country.
Yeah, that last field goal actually tied his own record for the most in a single season at Alabama. His next field goal, he will become the all-time leader in Alabama football history. Philip Doyle kicked for Coach Stallings back in the early 90s. And again, Tiffin getting a little more length on that kickoff. I think he's pumped up to be playing here in his last home game. Again, for Russ Huesman, we need to mention again, this is a team that was 1-11 a year ago. They won 2 games 2 years ago. He gets the opportunity to return to his alma mater. They were picked last in the Southern Conference preseason poll, and he winds up 6-4. It was a heck of a season.
Pretty good turnaround. You know, you mentioned they were 1-11 last year, 6-4. But I think the interesting thing about talking to him the other day is that 6-4 in his mind, while it might be good to a lot of the Chattanooga fans, it's not going to be good for them next year. He doesn't want to hear any more about the moral victories and about the turnaround. They expect to win championships in the future, and he's going to demand a lot more out of those guys next year.
AY gets knocked out of bounds, and then flag comes flying in. He picked up 2 yards on the carry. Again, Mark Curlis, our referee.
Holding, number 12, offense. 10-yard penalty from the end of the run. Still first down.
That holding was against Jared Galt. Again, Huesman was a defensive back of some note at Chattanooga when he played for Coach Morrison, Joe Morrison, and Brother Bill Oliver. Brother Bill, of course, was here at Alabama for many years, and he was also a star center fielder on the baseball team.
You mentioned his reputation as a player. He said it's only grown in his return to Chattanooga. As far as the players are concerned, he was a lot better maybe than what he actually was on the field. But the burden of having to go back and coach at your alma mater, while it's great, you know, to be able to be familiar with that area and familiar with the program, you feel a little bit more pressure. And certainly he is excited about the job and turning it around, but knows that they expect a lot of him, especially because of his ties to the school.
When they beat Presbyterian on September 19th, it ended that 17-game losing streak. kind of got everybody excited at Chattanooga. They have beautiful facilities, and Finley Stadium is really a very, very nice football stadium where they play the championship game every year. Josh Chapman has made 2 tackles in a row for the Crimson Tide. There he is, big number 99, the heir apparent to Terrence Cody. Chapman is a kid from Hoover, right up the highway, about 40 miles. It's a suburb of Birmingham, and he played for that famous high school, Hoover High School, which was 2 A Days fame, the show on MTV, and he was on those terrific teams they featured in that national show.
Doug, I watched that show quite a bit. I don't think I realized till today how serious these folks take high school football in the area. A lot of talk around the press box today about some of the playoff games that took place last night in the state.
Coleman has a wide open receiver and overshoots him on the outside. Again, that was intended for Screen, Buster Screen, who's the return man.
Not a whole lot of time back there to throw the football, you know, against other SoCon teams. B.J. Coleman probably could set up a little bit more and deliver a strike in that one, but with the pressure that he's facing against this Alabama front seven, he's having to get it out kind of quickly, thus the inaccurate throw.
Julio Jones is lined up in midfield, awaiting the punt from Mike Hammonds. Julio calls for the fair catch. Only a 32-yard punt. And Alabama will be in business starting in Chattanooga territory at the 46-yard line. A close one in Little Rock. Not the situation here in Tuscaloosa, where Alabama dominating Chattanooga as we expected, 38-0. Senior day, 26 seniors saying goodbye. Doug Bell and Chris Doring as the clouds come rolling in above the stadium here. Rain expected later this afternoon. I think we'll avoid it during the game as Star Jackson hands off to Upchurch. 6 yards now for Upchurch. Bradford on the stop for the Mocs. Again, Dan Mullen in his first year at Mississippi State. They have to beat Arkansas, have to beat Ole Miss to become bowl eligible.
Pretty impressive turnaround for that program as well. He's come in and made an immediate impact. They had some big wins. They played tough against Alabama last week. Anthony Dixon put up the most yards against this Alabama defense that any team has had, or any back has had this season. But I think there's some bright things for this Mississippi State program going forward.
Star Jackson now kept his footing on that slick turf, and it's going to be a first down for the Crimson Tide. That goes to Brad Smelly, 12-yard pickup. Smelly is a Tuscaloosa kid, and his brother Chris was the young man who played quarterback for Steve Spurrier, South Carolina, and then transferred back to Alabama, where he is now on the baseball team. So the Smelly boys are both in school here at Alabama. Upchurch gets tackled up around the collar. That's a 2-yard loss. Doug Fadaliga got him high and took him down quickly.
A nice play by Fadaliga there, penetrating, reading the play, and then bringing Upchurch down for a loss. That's one of the better defensive plays we've seen from Chattanooga tonight.
Again, Alabama rolling in some of the younger players. Well, Brian Motley's in their left guard. David Ross now the center. Star Jackson fires it to the outside. Mike McCoy was right there. Goes out of bounds.
So you'll see a little bit more mobility from Star Jackson than you will from Greg McElroy. He likes to move outside the pocket. Very athletic. Very different from what we see when McElroy's in the ball game, and he certainly has a lot more elusiveness. So we'll see him moving around throughout the afternoon, and he's at the quarterback position.
Against Stars from Lake Worth, Florida. That's down in the West Palm Beach area. Jackson looking and now scrambling. And he gets knocked out of bounds for a hefty loss. Probably when he got outside the tackle zone, should have thrown that ball away. That's a 10-yard loss.
Yeah, Doug, you mentioned he'll learn from that play as well on 3rd down. Nobody open. You got to throw the ball into the stands and keep yourself in field goal range. Probably not what Nick Saban wanted to see from his backup quarterback there.
So 4th down and 19, and Starr will stay on the field. Get an opportunity for a long conversion. Again, Starr came into this game. He was 9 out of 13 for 87 yards against North Texas. And Alabama calls timeout. Nick Saban will demand perfection even from the backup, and up 38-0. When we come back, we'll give you a sneak preview of the blind side. Coach Saban, one of the stars. We'll tell you all about it when we come back next. Following the timeout, Nick Saban got into Star Jackson's face and told him to gear it up out there. So at 4th and 19. Here comes the redshirt freshman. Keeps it himself. Flag comes flying in. That's usually in the area of a holding penalty. Picks up 3 on the scramble.
Holding, number 74, offense. Penalties declined. 1st down, Chattanooga.
So the hold goes against David Ross. And they'll decline that, and Chattanooga will take over on downs. Of course, Nick Saban is in the movie Blind Side, which opened nationally yesterday. And after this play, we'll show you the scene where he actually plays himself as the LSU coach when he was recruiting Michael Orr, the young man from Memphis. What a story. Played at Ole Miss and now with the Baltimore Ravens. B.J. Coleman, that play was whistled dead.
Before the snap, false start, number 70, offense. 5-yard penalty, still 1st down.
All right, let's look at the scene. Blind Side, starring Nick Saban.
Coach, how are you? Come in. Sean Toohey.
Sean,
Nice
Nick
to see you.
Saban, nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Appreciate the opportunity to come in your home.
This is my daughter Collins.
Hi, pleasure to meet you.
And you must be Leanne.
That would be me, Coach Saban.
Nice to meet you. Just call me Nick. Well, this is an incredible home.
So there's Coach Saban. They say they told the coaches just to ad-lib. What do you think?
I don't know if he wants to give up the sideline job down there, but you know, not a bad appearance for himself. You get in there and act every time you go into somebody's home. You know, when you go to recruit, you got to have some ability to act and impress the parents. You know, maybe not too far out of the realm of possibility for him.
Well, that was the scene of Sandra Bullock and Tim McGraw play the parents of Michael Orr, at least the couple in Memphis who adopted the young man. B.J. Coleman throws another incompletion. Again, tight coverage on the outside. That was Chris Rogers. The Alabama defense, of course, now many of the young players are in, but they came in ranked 3rd in total defense behind Florida and Texas.
That was something that Nick Saban says he uses to motivate. Kirby Smart, the defensive coordinator, constantly reminds this defensive group that they trail Texas and trail Florida in most of those defensive statistics, and trying to use whatever they can to motivate.
On 3rd down, that ball goes incomplete. Robbie Green, young man from New Orleans, 2nd-year man, broke that play up.
B.J. Coleman trying to find his receiver down the middle of the field. Nice shot there of knocking the ball loose. Had a chance. That's another one of those drop balls. Chattanooga really hasn't taken advantage of the opportunities, and that's one of the things that we talked about earlier, was they're going to have to catch some footballs if they're going to make this game at all competitive.
Julio Jones goes backwards, calls for that fair catch right at the 25-yard line. 44-yard punt, 0 on the return. Let's check in with our friends at the SEC Network studio. Rob. Quite a game in Little Rock, Arkansas. The Hogs still split time between their home in Fayetteville and Memorial Stadium in Little Rock. Mallett, of course, you always compare, when you're the other quarterback, you're always comparing your stats to his because he has such outlandish numbers. And there really is no comparison.
Now, Ryan Mallett has had a tremendous season, especially in the second half. It's going to be hard to knock him out of that all SEC quarterback position. He has done a tremendous job this season. I'm anxious. I hope he comes back next year. We had an opportunity to watch him last week, and that offense that Bobby Petrino runs, very fun. The trio of sophomore receivers, they got a chance to be pretty good if he does return next season.
Second down, Star Jackson on the quarterback draw. Again, for Jackson, that's what he brings to the table, that quickness factor. A little more maneuverability than Greg McElroy. Picks up 10 yards on the play. Star Jackson wearing number 2, and Alabama fans remember David Palmer, the Deuce, who got loose during that national championship season in 1992, wore number 2. He was a Birmingham product. That was the last national title for the Crimson Tide. 12 titles. Can they get 13 this season? That's what this fan base is hoping, as that's Roy Upchurch goes forward, gets tripped up by Tippett. A lot of big games ahead, though, Chris, before you can play for that national championship. You got to get by Auburn, at Auburn, and Florida and Atlanta.
Yeah, Nick Saban's approach is you got to take one at a time. And certainly this game here seems like it's well in hand, but a lot out there. You play the entire season, and it comes down to the next couple of weeks, and playing against Auburn in that Iron Bowl, that'd be probably a pretty good dream come true for a lot of Auburn fans if they were able to knock this Alabama team out of the ranks of the unbeaten.
Upchurch with a 10-yard pickup and a first down. He's starting to warm up. Let's take a look now at our road to the Dr. Pepper SEC Championship. Alabama with the most of anyone, 21 SEC crowns. The Gators with 8.
Doug, these two teams are very similar in my mind. You know, you look at some of the frustration that the fans have had with both Florida and Alabama's offenses this year. They've won primarily with defense. They run the ball very, very well. So in my mind, it's almost a mirror image of one another as they take each other on December 5th in Atlanta. Two very strong-willed head coaches, passionate fan bases with expectations right now that are really through the roof for both of them.
Yeah, the game a year ago that Florida really won in the fourth quarter was one of the most exciting games I've ever witnessed in person. And that Georgia Dome just exemplifies all the excitement of a big game. The noise, and everybody's so close to the playing field. And that's Demetrius Good. His second straight carry, picks up 5. Nick Craig on the stop for the Mocs.
Doug, I played in the first couple SEC championship games against Alabama. We did the first 2 in Birmingham, but it was when the conference transitioned into the Georgia Dome that I think the SEC championship game really took it to the next level. That atmosphere there in the Dome, it's almost like a Super Bowl kind of feel to it. You got the SEC fanfare. It's just a tremendous event that the conference puts on, and I was so happy to have a chance to be a part of 4 SEC championship games, 3 of them against Alabama, and that's really the way in my mind it's supposed to be. Alabama against Florida, 2 heavyweights taking each other on, and it's going to be a good one in a couple weeks.
Roy Upchurch moves the chains for another first down with a 4-yard pickup. Yeah, that one year you didn't play Alabama, you played Arkansas.
Played Arkansas in '95. That was the year we went undefeated and went to the national championship game against Nebraska. But just a little different feel in the Dome when Alabama wasn't there. The passionate fans that Alabama has and the band, and it's a great atmosphere when those two teams meet up.
Star Jackson with the play fake. Rifles it out to Mike McCoy. Mike McCoy, one of the seniors, 26 in all, saying goodbye to the home crowd today. Picks up 7. McCoy now has 10 catches on the season. 2 today. Puts that number now at 10. It'll be 2nd down and 4. And again, this stadium, Bryant-Denny Stadium, will be over 100,000 next season when the Tide opens against Fresno and then Penn State. And Joe Paterno roll in for the 2nd game.
Pretty good schedule next year, getting a chance to take Penn State on in here. I know Alabama fans lining up for that extra 20,000 seats or so that they're installing. They could probably sell about 200,000 if they could find the room to put those seats in, as passionate as these fans are.
Andre Billingsley comes in now at tight end. Baron Huber will be the blocking back, the H-back. And Roy Upchurch lines up behind Star Jackson. Upchurch gets another first down as the time ticks down at the end of the 3rd quarter. When we come back, we'll revisit some of those great games Chris Doering was involved in the SEC championship. Welcome back, everyone, to the Wrangler SEC Network Game of the Week. And Alabama, number 2 in the nation, leads Chattanooga as we begin the 4th quarter, 38-0. We're getting excited about the SEC championship game against Florida and Alabama one more time. It was back in '94. First one played in the Georgia Dome. And Chris, the Gators were behind 23-17. Gene Stallings against the old ball coach, and there you are.
Yeah, we're had a big run here late in that football game, down a touchdown, and I got a chance to throw one and then come back and catch the game winner with about 5 minutes left. Just a great, probably one of the best SEC championship games that ever been played, and just my privilege to be a part of it.
Yeah, Florida beat Alabama 24-23. The MVP of that game was Ellis Johnson, a tremendous defensive tackle for the Gators. And that was the Tide's first loss and only loss of that season.
But that was a good football team.
That was a terrific game, you're right. That's the 11th play of this drive. Upchurch gets it back, actually gets thrown for a 2-yard loss. You know, earlier I mentioned next season, the Tide with the new configuration of the stadium, it's actually San Jose State on September the 4th they play, and then the Penn State game. I think I mentioned Fresno State, but it'll be San Jose. And the end zone on this end will be identical to what is on the other end with the skyboxes, and it'll be gorgeous. And this place will be over 100,000 strong. And it's already loud. I can't imagine with the double deck on the other end zone.
No, this is one of the louder places that you get a chance to go to in the country. And I didn't ever get to play Alabama here, but I certainly would have loved to have that opportunity.
Upchurch, 12th play of the drive, picks up 11 yards. Let's go to the studio and Rob Stone. All right, so David Cutcliffe has turned things around at Duke. The culture, I know I did some Duke games there a year ago and enjoyed talking to him. And he really wants to get him back to a bowl game. It's been a long time. Upchurch continues to carry the load. Now he picks up 8 yards.
That Duke job is one of those games that a lot of people feel like you can't have success at. David Cutcliffe went in there and has certainly turned around that mentality and the mindset. They've been very competitive in the ACC this season.
That ball actually busted free. Baron Huber jumped on it for Alabama. Let's check the flags.
After the play, personal foul, number 40, offense. 15-yard penalty. The play resulted in a first down. It'll be 1st and 10.
So actually, the penalty was against Huber. A hit at the end of that play. And now Nick Saban will talk to Huber.
Doug, it's kind of ironic that B.J. Coleman is playing for this Chattanooga team rather than Duke. David Cutcliffe recruited B.J. Coleman to Tennessee originally, and a lot of people thought Coleman was going to end up playing at Duke under Cutcliffe again, but he chose his hometown Chattanooga Mocs, and things have worked out pretty well to this point. I know they feel like the future's bright down there in Chattanooga.
That's a 3-yard gain for Star Jackson. Joshua Williams with a stop for the Mocs. Again, B.J. Coleman will have 2 more years for Chattanooga.
He's a guy that Russ Huesman feels like can play at the next level. Big, strong, competitive guy, studies his opponent, constantly driving those around him to be better, and he has an awful good chance if he continues to progress in Coach Huesman's mind of being an NFL quarterback.
Upchurch putting his head down and driving forward. Consiglio wrestles him to the sidelines, and it looks like it's a first down. That's a 6-yard pickup. Strong run by Roy Upchurch.
A good job there by Upchurch of pushing the pile again. Just Chattanooga's defense physically outmatched against this Alabama offense. And again, we talked about the similarity between Trent Richardson and Mark Ingram. Roy Upchurch right along that same kind of mold, a big, powerful running back that can break tackles, but also has the elusiveness to take it the distance if he gets a seam.
New set of downs now for Star Jackson. And Roy Upchurch. He gets thrown backwards by Joseph Thornton. That's a 6-yard loss. Thornton, a 4-year starter for the Mocs, playing his final game in a Chattanooga uniform. Another one of those seniors who lost so many games for Chattanooga. It was really frustrating. And when Russ Huesman came on board, he talked to all the seniors, and he said, you know, he had the choice of running everybody off from the old regime, players, everybody, and he decided not to. And Thornton among those guys who bought in.
He said one thing you got to do as a head coach when you take over a program is try to identify the guys that want to be a part of what you're doing. And what he wanted those guys to do is they wanted to win championships on the field. He wanted them to get their degrees. And right now, he feels like he's got a pretty good core of guys that have bought into what he's doing. Next year, however, it's going to push him a little bit harder, going to even try to weed out more of the guys that don't want to be a part of this rebirth at the Chattanooga program. But after talking with him on the phone on Thursday and yesterday in person, his presence and command, I think they're going to have a good football team and have a chance to compete for some SoCon championships here in the next few years.
And it is a terrific league, arguably the best in the FCS level, the 1AA level, the Southern Conference. Appalachian State and Wofford, Elon, Samford, into the end zone, in and out of the hands of Earl Alexander.
Good job with Star Jackson giving him an opportunity to go get the ball. Alexander had the opportunity to catch it, just didn't make the play. He's another big receiver. Alabama has some big guys, not only Julio Jones, but Earl Alexander there, as you see, and Mike McCoy. Those guys 6'3", 6'4". And when your quarterback gives you an opportunity to go get the ball in the end zone, you got to make him, got to reward him. So we'll come back to you again in the future.
Illegal substitution. 12 players in the formation on the offense. 5-yard penalty, still 4th down.
So the illegal substitution for Alabama, the 12th man got off the field, but they actually were huddled up, and so that'll send Tiffin back 5 more yards. Goes from a 37 to a 42-yard attempt for Lee Tiffin. That ball was partially blocked. So Alabama is stopped. That was not Lee Tiffin. Almost a touchdown, but not quite. It's still 38-0. That was Jeremy Shelley, the kicker, who came in for Lee Tiffin, and that ball was blocked. Look at Kirby Smart, the young defensive coordinator for the University of Alabama. He was a terrific player in his own right at the University of Georgia. His first job at GA, job under Bobby Bowden at FSU, and now he's tutored under Nick Saban in this defense. Under the direction of Saban and Smart, they are pretty stout.
He's done a tremendous job this year with these guys, and he said his job is kind of easy when you have as many starters returning. They had 8 starters returning from last year's defense. The thing that scares him the most is having to come back next season and replace not only the 7 seniors that graduate after the year ends, but probably Rolando McClain as well. He's a guy that probably will take it to the NFL next year, so you're going to lose 8 of your 11 starters. You do get Dante Hightower back next year, but certainly getting some young guys experience out here late in this ball game will only benefit that transition to those new defensive starters next year.
Bo Dyer lines up to the right of B.J. Coleman. He stays in to block, and Coleman with another terrific pass on the outside that Clint Woods cannot retrieve. And it appears today it'll be 31 games in a row that Alabama has not allowed a 100-yard rusher. In fact, they're the only team not to allow a 100-yard rusher in the 2008 and 2009 seasons. That's pretty remarkable this day and age.
Yeah, that was all the way back into October of 2007 against Ole Miss when Jarvis Green Ellis went for 100. Anthony Dixon, the closest to come to that 100-yard mark this year. That was last week against Mississippi State. He had 88 yards rushing for the Bulldogs. But this defense, you look at their statistics, what they've done over the last 2 years. They've only allowed, they've allowed 200 yards or less than 200 yards to 9 opponents in the 2-year span. So they have had some dominance, not only against teams like Chattanooga, but against SEC teams as well. This year, only giving up 6 touchdowns in the 7 SEC games that they've played. It's a pretty impressive list of statistics you can rattle off.
Yeah, and talking to Kirby Smart, there you see Brandon Dietrich. They run that 3-4 defense. Lorenzo Washington and Cody in the middle. Of course, he's not on third downs. He's not a pass rusher. But we asked Kirby, and we'll talk about that. Let's watch the punt first. And a fair catch called for by Julio, and he bobbles it, but stays on it. 42-yard punt, no return. Again, we'll talk about Kirby Smart, and he compared his defense to Florida's defense. We'll talk about that further when we return. 8.5 minutes to play here in the fourth quarter. Alabama leads Chattanooga 38-0. And remember, the only SEC Big East Bowl matchup will take place in Birmingham, Legion Field, Saturday, January 2nd. Get your tickets now for the 4th annual PapaJohns.com Bowl. Log on to PapaJohnsBowl.com and find out more. Looks like Steve Spurrier may be headed back as you look at Kirby Smart. Now, again, we talked to Kirby yesterday, Chris. We asked him about the Florida defense compared to his, and he said, the big difference is they put pressure with their 4 guys up front without blitzing a lot, and he wishes that he could put more pressure with his front 3.
Yeah, the main Achilles heel for this Alabama defense has been the fact that they can't get pressure on the quarterback with their front. They have to blitz. They have to bring extra guys, and sometimes that can put your secondary in a little bit of a bind. So what he wants to see out of his guys is more push, more getting after the quarterback. And you're right, Florida differs. They have a very dynamic defensive line with Cunningham and some of the Carlos Dunlap as well. They can get after the quarterback. He challenged his defense to try to be more like Florida when it comes to pursuing the quarterback.
Second down for Star Jackson. Back to Upchurch. Let's take a look now at the upcoming schedule for the Crimson Tide, brought to you by Toyota. Moving forward, it's the Iron Bowl the day after Thanksgiving, which means a short week for the Crimson Tide. Auburn had an off week. And then the rematch with Florida in the SEC Championship.
Couldn't get any bigger than those two back-to-back. Talk about the rivalry that Auburn and Alabama have. Florida and Alabama have developed a similar type rivalry. Maybe not the same kind of hatred, but mutual respect and admiration amongst these two teams and coaches and fan bases. But those are two large football games with a lot of implications riding on each of them.
Kirby Smart worked with Nick Saban with Miami Dolphins and then came with him to Tuscaloosa. And you talk to Smart and you almost think you're talking to a young Nick Saban. I mean, they're both pretty serious guys, burning the midnight oil. Don't you sense that?
Yeah, it definitely prefers the NFL, or prefers the college ranks over the NFL, the time that they're able to spend at home here with his family. But two very intense guys that really love coaching defense and committed to their craft and teaching these young men.
Brad Smelly catches that pass for a first down. That goes for 12 yards. Again, this is our SEC Network Game of the Week, presented by Wrangler. We're live in Tuscaloosa. Doug Bell and Chris Doring. Crimson Tide took care of this one in the first half. Again, Chattanooga looks like they may not get over 100 yards of total offense today.
Be nice to see Alabama's offense score some points here in the second half. Really haven't done a whole lot. And Coach Saban wants to see some production out of guys like Star Jackson and Upchurch as well.
Good on the 8-yard carry. Let's look now at our Liberty Mutual play of the game. It happened in the first quarter. Chattanooga punted to the ever-dangerous Javi Arenas on senior day. He delights 92,000 strong here in this beautiful stadium.
What a way to cap his career. He's been outstanding in the secondary for Alabama, but the main reason he was recruited here was because of his ability to return kicks. Took one to the crib in what will be his last time out here on this turf.
Back to Good. Broke a tackle, did a nice job, gets a first down. Chris Lewis Harris on the stop. Arenas there. This is a tender moment for these guys. As Chris mentioned, you get recruited, you come in a blink of an eye, 4 or 5 years is over.
Anytime I get a chance to talk to guys that are playing at the college level, I try to encourage them to enjoy it because it goes by so incredibly quickly. Those were some of the best years of my life. You know, I enjoyed playing in the NFL, but the college game, the passion of the SEC, getting to play with guys for 4 or 5 years and those bonds that you make, it's something special you can't really duplicate in any other walk of life.
Another first down. Mark Ingram talking to young Mr. Good. Actually, Ingram is pretty young himself. He will turn 20 mark in December, right after the SEC Championship and prior to whatever bowl game Alabama plays in. 19 years old Mark Ingram could be headed for a Heisman Trophy. First ever in the history of this program. And it's a touchdown for Roy Upchurch, 21 yards.
You were in the midst of talking about Mark Ingram. Roy Upchurch decides to come out and do his best Mark Ingram impersonation, and we talked about Ingram's ability to pick up big yards after contact. Roy Upchurch certainly did the exact same thing right there and getting Alabama into the end zone.
So now the extra point. Jeremy Shelley got that one up a little higher than the field goal attempt. And Alabama leads 45-0. Roy Upchurch, one of the 26 seniors saying goodbye. Senior from Tallahassee. Four minutes to play in this one in Tuscaloosa, and Alabama will go 11-0. They lead 45-0. Mark Ingram played well for a short time the first half.
Yeah, Mark Ingram came into the ball game needing to extend that momentum he's created in his chase for the Heisman Trophy. Had 11 carries for just over 100 yards, including these 2 touchdowns, one of 25 yards, and then the long one for 40 here to cap off his afternoon.
Mark Ingram, our Wrangler 5-star player of the game, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns, and about a quarter and a half. And he will now get geared up for Auburn, Florida, and beyond. Yes, Ingram for Heisman. They're thirsty for a Heisman Trophy winner in the Alabama nation.
No real clear-cut favorite, up until probably just last week when Ingram's really, in my mind, started to separate himself from the other 4. But a big stage left for Ingram and Tebow as they'll face off in a couple weeks. McCoy will have a chance in his conference tournament or conference championship game. And then, of course, C.J. Spiller, should Clemson win tonight, will be playing in the ACC championship game against Georgia Tech. So there's a lot of time out there. The ballot's just recently going out. It's about momentum and finishing strong down the stretch, especially when you have a chance to win a championship.
Again, Chattanooga does not have 100 yards total offense. I think they're at 75. So they'll try to break the shutout and maybe get over 100 total yards. This is their last game of the season. They're going to wind up 6-5. Breaking a tackle, J.J. Jackson. Picks up 7 yards.
Here's some helmets popping down there, even though it's only 4 minutes left in the ball game. Chattanooga still playing hard. Coach Huseman talked about some of the fans and the alumni mentioning to these players that they haven't quit all season long. He doesn't expect any of these guys to quit. He said that's like crediting a guy for not robbing the bank. They expect these guys to play for 60 minutes, and that's exactly what they've given this Alabama team all day.
Tony Pastore in there at quarterback now. Hands off again to J.J. Jackson. Celebrating its 5th year sponsoring the Good Hands Field Goal Nets, Allstate makes contributions to participating universities' general scholarship funds for each field goal and extra point kicked. To date, Allstate has contributed more than $1.9 million in scholarship monies. It should be a festive atmosphere on the quad. From our stadium, we can hear the rings of Denny chimes. Major celebration, another perfect start to this season. 11-0. It could be the second straight start. They start 12-0 under Nick Saban. Last season they lost to Florida and then lost to Utah in the Sugar Bowl, which left a bitter taste in everybody's mouth. What have they done? They've regrouped, and here they are. Same scenario all over again.
Kind of hard to believe that Nick Saban, with all the success that he's had in the college ranks, that this is the first time that he's ever had seasons of 10 wins or more in back-to-back years. Very impressed sitting down with him and his presence in the office yesterday. You can definitely tell why his guys play as hard as they do for him.
Kareem Jackson calls for that fair catch, backtracks to the 12-yard line. That's a pretty good kick. In Kareem, 2 number 3s in this Alabama team. Trent Richardson, the other. Today's SEC Network game was brought to you by Champion. It's how you play. Allstate, you're in good hands. The 4th annual PapaJohns.com Bowl on January 2nd. Visit PapaJohns.com for more information. AT&T, your world delivered. Nissan, shift the way you move. And by Woodman of the World Life Insurance Society of Omaha, Nebraska. It's the crystal houndstooth hat at the Bryant Museum. And yesterday when Chris and I were walking through with Clem Griska, Coach Griska, we asked, how much does that cost? And he said, a lot. That's all he said, a lot. The houndstooth hat.
You know, I'm a Florida guy, but I'm a fan of SEC football, and getting a chance to go into that museum yesterday with Coach Griska really was special for me, and seeing history at the university, the passion of the fans, how many fans have sent in their pieces of memorabilia that have been displayed as part of that great museum. I just really in awe of everything that I've seen here this weekend in Tuscaloosa.
Thomas Dara in at quarterback now. Handed off to Good in that last one. Looks like same combination again. And Good showing some quickness. Shooting through for a first down. Picks up 9. Alabama with over 400 yards of total offense, and Chattanooga will wind up with just 84.
How about that yards per play there? Chattanooga just 1.8 yards per play, whereas Alabama had 5.9 per play. And B.J. Coleman probably a victim of a lot of drops tonight. They should have had some better production on offense, but maybe guys a little nervous being in this large stage here at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Back to the ground game and Good. That will stop the clock with 25 seconds as he picks up 7. And Nick Saban really was looking around to make sure all the seniors had gotten into the game. And these coaches, there's no rest for the weary with a short week. They begin working immediately on the Auburn game plan.
A lot of Alabama fans not happy about that game being moved to Friday, the short week of preparation for Alabama. Auburn off last week, so they get a chance to prepare for this Crimson Tide team for an entire 2 weeks. We'll see if Alabama can turn things around quickly and get ready for Friday's game.
And that should do it. As Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide wind up their home schedule with a 45-0 win. Mount Cody and company, 26 seniors in all, play their last home game. It's 45-0. Russ Huesman shake hands with Saban. And now the fun begins for this Alabama team. We'll be right back with more from Alabama after this from the Southeastern Conference. Our final as Terrence Cody looks up, waves goodbye, 45-0. Today's SEC Network Game of the Week has been presented by Wrangler. Chris Doering, what lies ahead for this Tide team?
This is one of those games you want to get out of the way so that you can really turn your attention to the 2 big games you have left. None bigger than the Iron Bowl game against Auburn. So I think for these guys, a little bit of relief that they can now actually start talking about what's on the horizon for them.
Again, the final score, Alabama 45, Chattanooga 0. The Iron Bowl is on Friday.